Won Sok Lim, Sok. In your book Grey Canvas, that has recently come out and is available on Amazon.com, you say, and I quote, "The country for which you feel the most compassion is North Korea," unquote. Yet you yourself are South Korean born in 1966, which makes you 46 years old, and you're also a Canadian citizen. How is it that you're claiming to be a spokesperson for North Koreans? Can you explain this?
Compassion comes from sharing the same kind of trauma. We often find this pattern. For instance, a person who might be interested in helping junkies was an ex-junkie himself. I share the trauma that is common in North Korea, yet I went through it. As a person who lives in the West, I see objectively. In my view, a country that is grotesquely misunderstood is North Korea, as if their strangeness in Orwellian nightmare is due to their genes rather than conditioning or life experience. That includes their leaders as well. That explains why North Koreans are reclusive. Who wants to hang out if one has to be misunderstood all the time? Without either experiencing or understanding the core trauma of North Koreans, any opinions or perceptions about them are all prejudice. I have decided not to wait until one of unlikely North Korean person comes out to speak to the world objectively. Therefore, I like to speak for North Koreans through my personal trauma.
So, what was your particular trauma? And in what sense was it similar to that of North Koreans?
The closest description in characteristic of my trauma and North Korean trauma is post-war syndrome. When I was 4, one day, out of clear blue, my mom announced that she's going to kill me, and then she put heavy futon on my face and sat on it. As I was struggling to breathe and survive, at some point, I believed I would die. And at that point, I accepted my death. I mean, I didn't really have choice but accepting it, and kids usually accept any kind of traumas. What I didn't know was that my mom wasn't going to kill me. She was going to just only pass her trauma from her husband on me. When a death trauma like that happens to a kid, and then he accepts his own death, two things happen. Firstly, he understands what life is. Life is what is coming, what is in between what is coming, which is birth, and going, which is death. And then because of a short interval between birth and death, you get to see it very clearly. Therefore, he doesn't have illusion about reality. On top of it, because he accepted his death, he doesn't have a concept of punishment. With that, he doesn't have a concept of religion either. I mean, what would be the point of begging for God, begging to God, if he can simply die? And on top of it, he has a certain attraction toward killing and dying. Therefore, he's present and he's charismatic. Second thing that happens is that he doesn't have concept of trust either. If his mom was turned out to be a killer all of a sudden, what about others? He doesn't trust anyone. And he's like a cat, mistrusting and being suspicious, ready to pounce. When that happens, he becomes self-interested. And with that, he started having appetite for life only to live for himself. But when it comes to living for himself, that has defined his mom by his mom, and his mom is his role model. Simply as a kid, he learned from his mom without judgment. He becomes a detached killer. This kind of psyche is well described, demonstrated, and documented through the movie The Killing Fields. In it, it describes children living under constant war situation in Cambodia, and that they are killers killing people left and right. For them, it's just a game of tag. And in my opinion, that describes what post-war syndrome is bestly. in case of Korea, in her history, it was invaded so many times. Therefore, inevitably, Koreans had to go through constant post-war syndrome, and then a lot of kids had to experience constant death traumas. This kind of psyche is well reflected in a person, the founder of North Korea, Kim Il-sung. And Kim Il-sung and criminals like 007, as an example. Let's say 007 was, he was born as an orphan, and then let's say he went through a lot of death traumas. For him, he's only one-sided. He doesn't know loving and nurturing side. And his Kim Il-sung's reality is that he wants to live for himself, and then his and life is joyful killing game. And therefore, these people don't have doubt. To have doubt, you need both, like what to choose. But knowing only one experience, only because they never experienced anything else, and then because of that, they don't have guilt, and then they are innocent monsters. When the kids go through death trauma, and then he becomes a genius, masterminded criminal, and some people might think that being a genius has to do with certain genes or luck. In my opinion, it has to do with trauma. Imagine a 5-year-old kid going through death trauma and decide to live for himself. By the time he's 25, he spent 20 years of best of learning time as a kid to investigate and learn how to live for himself by killing. Kids learn fast, effectively. Therefore, at some point, they come to the conclusion that once they joyfully kill people left and right, other people get insecure. Once they get insecure, they become dependent. With a dependency, they need either God or leader. Kim Il-sung conveniently was able to place himself as a godlike leader. This psyche of Kim Il-sung and North Koreans and South Koreans is shaped by many invasions. Question is why Korea was invaded so many times. That can be explained through the concept, the difference between an island and a peninsula. As an example, Japan, an island, they live in a paradise island, and then at some point in their mind, they start wondering, someday they will be invaded, which is true when you really think about the history of a colonization. So they were right, and then they come to the conclusion they might as well strike first. And then the psyche was well reflected through Pearl Harbor attack. In case of Korea, which is peninsula, which is surrounded by Japan, and also surrounded and connected to China, Mongolia. What's the point of even preparing military? It's for Koreans to have peace, they have to first conquer Japan, China, Mongolia. Considering how small Korea is, it's quite unlikely. Therefore, they become very naive and innocent, childlike people who just wait for the next round of invasion. This kind of psyche is also can be found among children with abusive parents. Let's say these alcoholic parents beat up their children every once in a while, and for kids, they simply accept beatings and harassment, and they wait until the next round. Thinking all this, the psyche of Korea is an outcome of how rest of the whole world chose to live. Because in Korean history, they never invaded anyone unless there was defense reason. That is same as children in the movie Killing Fields. It's not like those children initiated the war, but they're caught between adults' war. Therefore, question I want to ask is that can anyone throw stones at those children?